A lot of men get labeled because someone ran into a surface man. And instead of healing, they turn the pain into a blanket they throw on all of us. Don't be a surface man. Because when you move shallow, you make it easy for people to paint us all with the same paintbrush. Let's slow that down. There are men out here who are carrying reputations they didn't earn. They're walking into rooms already judged. They're entering relationships already doubted. They're showing up to conversations already guilty, and not because of anything they did, but because someone else got hurt by a man who never built himself. And the world doesn't always separate the two. Somebody gets hurt by one man, and suddenly every man is a suspect. Somebody gets disappointed by one man, and suddenly every man is dangerous. Somebody gets betrayed by one man, and suddenly every man is untrustworthy. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for the wounds caused by a man who never built depth. But you are not allowed to become him either. Let's unpack that. I want to talk about the surface man's impact. See, a surface man is dangerous because he's convincing. He looks complete. He looks stable. He looks confident. He looks like he knows who he is. But everything about him is thin. His identity is shallow. His confidence is conditional. His masculinity is performative. His emotions are flimsy. And his consistency is non-existent. He's a man who can talk a good game, but can't live one. See, he can impress a room, but can't hold a relationship. He can attract attention, but can't sustain trust. And when he hurts somebody, and he will, that person doesn't just blame him. They blame men. They take his behavior and turn it into a stereotype. They take his inconsistency and turn it into a rule. They take his lack of depth and turn it into a world view. This is the cost of the surface man. He doesn't just damage the people close to him. He damages the reputation of men who aren't even built like him. Don't be a surface man. Not because you're trying to escape judgment, but because you refuse to contribute to it. King, when someone gets hurt by a surface man, they often swing to the extreme. All men are like this. All men don't care. All men are shallow. All men are surface. That's not true. That's just trauma talking. See, it's easier to blame a category than confront a wound. It's easier to generalize than heal. It's easier to throw a blanket than face the details. And here's the part most people won't admit. Blanket blame feels safe. It feels protective. It feels like armor. Because if you assume all men are dangerous, you never have to risk trusting one again. If you assume all men are shallow, you never have to risk being vulnerable again. And if you assume all men are surface, you never have to risk being disappointed again. But men end up carrying a weight they didn't earn. And too many men stay quiet and let that shame stick. See, there's a problem with blanket blame. Blanket blame is emotional convenience. It's a shortcut. It's a way to avoid accountability, nuance, and reflection. And here's the danger. When someone throws a blanket over men, they're not just describing their experience. They're rewriting the identity of men who had nothing to do with it. And if you're not careful, you'll start living under that blanket. You'll start shrinking. You'll start apologizing for things you didn't do. You'll start carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. You'll start believing you're responsible for someone else's pain. And a king doesn't accept labels he didn't earn. He doesn't shrink because someone else got hurt by a man who wasn't built like him. He doesn't apologize for a wound he didn't create. And he doesn't carry shame that isn't his. He stands firm in his identity. We all must stand firm in our identity. Kings, we must reject unearned shame. See, you can empathize with someone's pain without wearing their accusation. You can acknowledge their hurt without letting it redefine you. A king stands firm in his identity. He knows who he is, he knows what he builds, and he knows what he refuses to be. And he refuses to let someone else's wound become his prison. Not because you're trying to escape someone's stereotype, but because you're building depth for yourself. You grow because you choose to, not because you're running from someone's wound. Fellas, this is the part men don't like hearing. Sometimes the blanket exists because too many men were surface. Too many men were shallow. Too many men were flimsy. Too many men were inconsistent. And the world got tired. So yes, reject unearned shame, but don't contribute to the stereotype. Don't be the man who makes it easy for people to say all men. Don't be the man who confirms their fear. Don't be the man who reinforces their wound. Build depth. Build consistency. Build emotional structure. Build a code. Because when you build yourself, you protect your name and you protect the names of men who stand beside you. King, raise your standard without raising their burden. That's the balance. You raise your standard because you're a king, not because you're trying to prove someone wrong, not because you're trying to escape a stereotype, not because you're trying to outrun their pain. You raise your standard because you're building a life that demands depth. You raise your standard because you refuse to be surface. You raise your standard because you know the details matter. The devil is in the details. So is love, and so is your character. So kings, this week, choose one thing to build. Build depth, build a code, build emotional structure. You can even reject unearned shame. If you are being surface, stop being surface. Pick one. Commit to it. Don't let someone else's pain rewrite your masculinity. And don't let your own lack of depth rewrite theirs. Kings, people will always try to turn their hurt into a rule. They'll try to make their disappointment your identity. They'll try to make their experience your burden. But you're not responsible for their wounds caused by men who never built themselves. You're responsible for your depth, your code, your consistency, your emotional structure, and your gravity. Don't let someone else's pain turn into your identity, and don't let your own lack of depth turn into someone else's pain. Don't be a surface man. Be a solid one. And remember, what you don't change, you choose. And this change can't afford excuses. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.